The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So the Senate has rejected a bill to ban most abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy or into a pregnancy. And it's basically a symbolic vote, which is hoping to force vulnerable Democrats to take a stand, which might hurt them if they are running for re-election in red states or states that are often sort of purple states, but were won by Donald Trump in the 2016 election. And it was a 51-46 vote. The measure fell short of the 60 vote threshold that's required for the Senate to break a Democratic filibuster. And it's not surprising. It basically was along party lines. Similar vote took place in the Senate in 2015. And at that time, there were three Democrats, Bob Casey, Joe Donnelly, and Joe Manchin, who voted in favor of it. And all three are up for re-election this year in states that Donald Trump carried. And they're all also voted in favor again on Monday. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, not surprisingly, voted with most of the Democrats against this bill. What do you think about this? Because it's similar to like the net neutrality vote, which also is a vote that has some element of putting people on record and then maybe being used to campaign for or against in the midterm election. What's your sense of this vote?
It's such a personal issue, and it's entirely for political posturing, whereas the net neutrality bill actually does have some chance. I mean, like, they have 50 votes in the Senate. You only need one more. And then if it does pass, then you're halfway there.
Well, to play devil's advocate, the people who believe that life begins at conception would say this is not a personal issue of just women deciding what to do with their bodies. They would say this is the paramount issue. It is an issue of human rights, and it is an issue of preventing the murders of unborn children. So I agree with you, and I happen to share your view. But if you believe that life begins at conception, it's the issue of killing babies or unborn babies or whatever you want to call them is not a personal issue. It's an issue of defending children or whatever.
But if you think that life begins at conception, then you want an all-out abortion ban, not 20 weeks. And I understand that's maybe what they could reasonably shoot for.
Sure. A lot of them do believe, when you talk to them, they say, well, we want a total abortion ban, but in order to do that, we need to start moving back somehow. So let's start with the 20-week threshold. And then once that's law, then we can continue to push. I mean, this is their argument.
It's certainly a viable debate that we can have, but they know that they don't have the votes. It's entirely to get these Democratic senators on record. And, you know, it seems like it's below the belt in a certain way. I guess it really isn't.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't think it's going to work ultimately because
it's not going
to. Legal abortion has a 57% favorability
higher than ever
in the country, and that's higher than ever. I don't know exactly how those numbers stack up in those purple states that some of these Democratic senators are vulnerable in.
Yeah.
But we'll see, I guess.
To finalize the devil's advocate thing, you said part of the reason why you're against this is that it doesn't have any chance. You can make the same case about the net neutrality thing, which is that even if it were to pass the Senate, it's not going to pass the House. And even if it were to pass the House, Trump's vetoing it. So that
maybe
you could make that argument still.
I mean, we've talked to a few people. We've talked to Craig Aaron about this. And we've talked to Andrew Torres.
Yep.
And I think both said that, you know, once it does pass the Senate, then we're going to have a worthy conversation in the
maybe
news
because
cycle.
of the momentum that would
There'll
cause.
Be momentum. People will reach out to their Congress people. And we don't even know what Trump's position is on net neutrality. It's not like, you know, House Republicans trying to overturn the Affordable Care Act something like 60 times, knowing
I know what you're
full well
saying.
that the president isn't going to sign off on his piece of legislation.
Trump appointed Ajit Pai, and then the FCC immediately repealed it. So even if Trump doesn't really know what his position is, and he doesn't even know what net neutrality is, which I believe he doesn't, he's going to veto the thing.
But Trump does have disagreements with Ajit Pai, and we're going to see that later in the week. We're going to do a story about the nationalized 5G.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
And they have a disagreement there. So, I mean, it's not like because he appointed him that he signs off on every single thing that Ajit Pai supports.
Certainly not. Certainly not. We'll see what happens with it. There's a California politician who, in order to try to protect the environment, proposed a bill which would make it a crime for restaurants where you eat in the restaurant to offer plastic straws without first being asked. And this is Democratic Assemblyman Ian Calderon. He's been targeted by people calling his proposal absurd and a total overreach. So He's not suggesting that plastic straws be banned. He is suggesting that plastic straws in restaurants not be offered by default, but only if the person who is dining asks for one. Now, a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I don't really drink out of a straw. So when I'm at a restaurant and they bring me my glass of water and a straw, if the straw is wrapped, I just don't touch it. If the straw is unwrapped and already in the water, I take it out and I put it on the side because I just don't really drink out of straws. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
There's another layer to this altogether, which is that there are restaurants, and I went to one here in the Boston area over the weekend for brunch, that has switched from plastic straws to recyclable paper straws.
Okay.
It's basically like a piece of paper that's tightly wound into a straw shape. And it was interesting, and I didn't use one again because I don't drink out of straws, but other people at my table did. But after about 15 minutes, it starts to become soggy and fall apart. And they ended up needing 3 total paper straws during the meal.
Oh, no.
Which they're still all recyclable, but is it kind of undoing some of the benefit of not having a plastic straw?
I don't think I'd like the texture. I don't think I would like how it feels to put like a paper straw in my mouth. Now, what about reusable straws? Something that you could made out of metal that you could wash, maybe?
Well, listen, in Argentina, it's very common that there is this, it's not tea, but it's a tea-like thing called mate. I'm calling it tea-like, even though it is something else, and it's an herbal thing, and you drink it out of a gourd, typically with a metal straw. And typically people also share the same metal straw, so you pass it around.
It's
It's
a communal
very,
thing.
very unhygienic, but it's a communal thing. Yeah, exactly. And people bring their own metal straws with them. I mean, in other words, people have a kit, I guess is what I mean, with their gourd and their metal straw. And I don't know why we're even talking about that because it doesn't directly relate, but it's a metal straw thing. And then even more interestingly, in Uruguay, it's common for people to walk on the street with their gourd and their metal straw and then a thermos of hot water, because the way it works is that you steep it many, many times. So like you fill it with water and you drink the water out of the gourd, but then you add more water and you can kind of like drink out of it throughout the day. And in Uruguay, it's very common to see people walking the streets with their little thermos and their wooden gourd, and gourds are wood, right? Or at least some of them are.
Yeah.
And their metal straw, and
Okay.
it has nothing to do with plastic straws in California restaurants, but just a little flavor from South America for you.
I hope you don't want me to respond to that.
Please respond to the use of metal straws in Argentina. Yeah.
Okay, so
In
back to
any
the
case,
story.
yeah,
now.
back to the story.
The penalty for these restaurants,
Yep.
if they just give out straws and don't ask the people ahead of time,
Right.
is hilarious. It's a $1,000 fine and/or 6 months in prison.
It's absurd. It's absurd, and I get it. He's trying to do something for the environment, is Mr. Calderon, but this doesn't seem like the right way to go about it, and I understand why he's being criticized. It's just 6 months in jail for giving people straws without the straw being asked for. I mean, come on.
This bill sounded ridiculous to begin with, but 6 months in jail, that's the final straw.
That's it. That's the final straw. Absolutely. Good one. Massachusetts Congressman Joe Kennedy III is going to be giving tonight's Democratic response to Trump's State of the Union address. I kind of like this. He's super young. He's 37. He is also a Kennedy, so he's part of that dynasty. But I find him to be astute and articulate in a way that is appealing to me. And I think that this is an interesting one. And he is sort of seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party, although I'm hesitant of more political dynasties.
Yeah. Well, he's intelligent. He's measured. He's compassionate.
He's
Three
everything
things
Trump
that Trump
isn't.
is not.
Top Democratic leaders announced this a few days ago, and they had heaps of praise or mountains of praise to heap upon Joe Kennedy. And he's the great nephew of former Senator Ted Kennedy and John F. Kennedy. And he is also, what other family? He is the
His father's
grandson.
Joe Kennedy II.
He's the grandson of the late Robert Kennedy,
Bobby
the
Kennedy,
U.S.
yeah.
Attorney General and New York Senator. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like this choice?
Well, I don't. I think that the responses to the State of the Union
kinda
need to be
pointless.
done away with.
Yeah.
They're always incredibly awkward. It's just like a one shot of the person speaking directly to the camera. There's no audience. It's very scripted. The people are often very awkward in their delivery.
I'm trying to remember the awkward ones that took place during Obama. So let me
Yep.
see if I can remember the
I have
good
some in
ones,
mind.
and you tell me which ones I'm missing or which ones didn't actually take place. Rand Paul and wait,
remember
did
that
Rand,
one.
no, Marco Rubio and
Yeah.
the water incident.
Watergate.
That was yes, Watergate. Watergate 2 was Marco Rubio. Bobby Jindal, the governor from Louisiana, coming out with what I call pedophile eyes, even though maybe that's considered inappropriate, but I think we all know exactly what I'm talking about, and seeming completely manic in looking at the camera. Did Sarah Palin do one once?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There was Michelle Bachmann
Oh,
looking
Bachmann.
directly off of the camera. I
That's
think
right.
they had the teleprompter instead of under the camera, like next to the camera.
Yeah.
So it was like this weird eye contact thing going on.
Any others that are particularly
Oh,
wacky?
Joni Ernst, the
Oh,
senator
yes.
from Iowa, who talked about when she was younger, they didn't have a lot of money.
Yep.
So in order to protect their shoes, her parents would put bread bags around them
Yep.
and tie them onto her feet. And she wasn't embarrassed because she would get on the school bus, and every other kid on the bus also had bread bags tied onto their feet.
And they also would castrate pigs or something.
I think that was her campaign ad.
Yeah. Remember when she was supposedly going to be like the rising star of the Republican Party, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
basically not been heard from since?
The Koch brothers backed her.
Yeah.
I don't know where she goes forward from here.
I
You
don't
know?
know. Hopefully back to
Iowa.
wherever on the farm to do whatever it was she was doing to pigs. Okay, well, anyway, I'll probably check out Joe
Yeah.
Kennedy's response, even though I agree with you. It's kind of a pointless tradition.
Right, and it's done like ahead of time. All this stuff. You can
Oh,
find
it's
it.
pre-recorded?
Oh no, it's not pre-recorded, but regardless of what the president says in the speech,
Oh, right.
he'll still have the same script to read. you
Although
know?
presumably they're writing the response speech based on the early release of the State of the Union speech to them as well, right? Which is
Yeah.
usually embargoed.
Yeah, and man, the question is like, would this allow him to launch a political career further than just being a congressman, like put him in the national eye?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably no.
Yeah, I agree.
The only person that really has done well after giving a response to the State of the Union is Paul Ryan,
Yeah.
who's now, of course, Speaker of the House.
But
That's
he
about
was
it.
he was already sort of prominent when he gave this.
Yeah, I don't know if it
response.
was before or after he ran alongside Mitt Romney in
Yeah.
2012.
All right, so we'll be watching tonight. We'll have analysis tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.